I'll be calling you a radical. This is a big, big deal, and everybody needs to spread this video around as far as they can. So, he's Governor Cox. I don't know what's in his head. I don't know what's in his head, but it's similar to it. What it reminds me of is when Trump made his Freudian slip and said, the bully is always the weakest person in the room. And then then he says the most bully freaking rhetoric I've ever heard. You know, this is twice now Governor Cox has called Kevin Blanch right out. I mean, he says environmentalists, but who's the environmentalist in the state of Utah? He knows. He and I's had multiple conversations over the years, and he called us stupid. He says he can't have an intelligent... What? I had conversations with him. I mean, the dude has a very, very low IQ. He has no dynamics whatsoever. None. He's being played like the fool he is. And it's the same thing. You get into a big argument, you know, with someone, whatever, when the most ignorant person will call you stupid. That's what he's doing. It's like a child. So this is so corrupt. So they're trying to get the HB 249 through and Senate Bill 216, which that's the nuclear waste to expand energy solutions out there. More nuclear waste here. So this week, believe it or not, downtown Salt Lake, this is so dirty and so corrupt, sponsored by Idaho National Lab, which I got news for you at Idaho National Lab and the whole thing. Trump's going to pull the plug on you. We'll get into that. So Governor Cox spoke at they're having their worldwide conference in downtown Salt Lake, just a stone's throw away from the Utah State Capitol during session, which is so crooked and evil and disgusting. These people all lined up on their SMR, Advanced Nuclear Fairy Tale. You know, they might as well have the Jackalope Conference and the Easter Bunny. This is the biggest loot job port. There are no SMRs. There will never be no SMRs. So he called me stupid twice. Try me. So this is an open invitation for Kevin Blanch, the world's foremost expert on nuclearism. Nuclear energy and nuclear bombs are one and the same. One day you'll wake up, which came first, the chicken? You have to have a nuclear energy reactors to have nuclear bombs that let them eat yellow cake. The denial he has of Fukushima, the denial he has of all the downwinders, including my father, who was nuked to death in Nevada test. Now, remember, I'm heavily, heavily connected in this predominant religion. Really connected. I grew up in it. I'm connected in it. My grandfather himself, well, he didn't have very many. I mean, he used to always say I only got 6 grandsons and 6 granddaughters. Just enough for pallbearers. Abraham Hunsaker the fourth. Without Abe the first, there is no predominant religion here. That's my grandfather. He did not believe in inherited wealth. I mean, the dude, oh, well, he was a genius. I mean, talk about these pioneers rolling in the graves. Oh, there. So yesterday, I was so upset and so pissed off yesterday when I read this. I mean, it was fuming. I had to calm myself down. So I'm very connected still here. Well, I mean, I grew up, I've been here my whole life. Everybody knows me. So one of the really, really, really high ranking in this religion, I drove over to his house and knocked on his door, and his beautiful wife, you know, they're getting up there in the years. Oh, hi, Kevin. Haven't seen you forever. How are you? You know, wonderful person. Old school, like my grandmother's, just a gem. Come in here. Let me give you something to eat. You know, that's the way they were. Yeah, he's here. He's just changing. So I sit down there, her and I visit. And she says, what's on your mind, Kevin? And I told her. And she's like, yeah, I've been reading about it. She says, it's disgusting. She says, all the price that we've paid in this state. I says, you know my line. Blue Castle on the Green, when they want to put the reactor, why not put up a statue of Ted Bundy on I-15, you know? I mean, throw it right in these people's face. Now remember, I don't eat, sleep, drink this. I sleep with it. I was given 2 months to live. I spent 5 years in the LDS state bone marrow transplant. I was given too much to live going in and out of a coma in there. Brutal. Brutal. That place is so brutal, it's unbelievable. I have AML de novo with a marker for, which is, I mean, it's a death sentence. I'm alive. I don't know how, but it's been a hell of a fight. Open heart surgery twice. This guy's a retired surgeon. I mean, friend of our families our whole lives. I mean, I've known him since I was a child. You know, Vincent, who saved my life, I will quote him when they had me misdiagnosed, whatever, and finally, I says, I think they have it wrong. The bone marrow biopsy, they go through your hip, dug it out, and he says, Kevin, let me tell you something. I've known you since you were a child. I would never say this to anybody else. This cancer that is in you is wicked. It's brutal. And I think you're right. I think they do have it wrong. I think you're right. I think it's de novo. It's cancer's presenting of tumors. He says, you know, Kevin, my brother and father both died of cancer, thyroid cancer. My brother died at 12 years old, central southern Utah, which Governor Cox is from. These doctors are all fierce anti-nukers, every one of them. They can't talk. He says, I said, well, I'm going to the Mayo Clinic. I've already talked to him. I've got money, blah, blah, blah. No. You're going to LDS State. I've talked to Finbo. He's the world. This guy's the greatest oncologist, I'm telling you, in the country, maybe the world. He's from Denmark. You know, I have Danish lines. I know Danish philosophy. Vincent has Danish lines. We talked a lot about it. And we talked about I had a dream. That's Danish philosophy. I had a dream. You know, this utopic dream, and these things appeared. You know, now I know they were cancer tumors. Is you hold on to that dream. I went in there and he says, this disease, what you have is, but I believe in you. I would not say this about anything. You go in there and fight. I know how you are. I know how your mind is. I mean, like I said, he's known me since I was a kid. So finally he comes downstairs, sits down there. Kev, what's on your mind? He says, I bet you already know. They all know me. And he says, yeah, you know. It's this new nuclear bill that Cox is trying to get through. Yeah, he says, there's a lot of us that are pissed, including me. There's a fight going on inside. I said, well, you need to win that fight. You know, this is high ranking in this prominent religion. No. And then we talked about John Huntsman. John Huntsman should have won. I mean, Cox won with 36% of the vote. And I said, this would have never happened if John, how come he won't speak up? Yeah, that's a very good question. He said, I said, do you remember when Huntsman Sr., John Huntsman Sr., he was a fierce anti-nuclear. Remember when he went after Mike Lee viciously for sending our old money back? You know, when they kicked me off Medicaid, when I was in there, I forked over $1 million worth of Tesla stock. 2011, went in there. I was not insured, and of course that exhausted in a hurry. And I didn't put myself on Medicaid. The caseworkers there did. Mike Lee, in 2015, his stance against sent all our own money back. So what they did, they kicked all single males off. I was in the unit. My doctors were so pissed they couldn't believe it. So my gallbladder was failing from the chemo. And that's some serious radical pain. Anybody that's ever had a gallbladder. Ooh. 2 days before I'm due to have it cut out, they call me and says, what are you talking about? I'm unsure. No letter, no nothing. And then I read, Mike Lee is freaking kicked all saying, all right, I'll treat myself. It ruptured, of course, almost killed me. Nobody at my open heart surgery. So we sit there and talked, you know, about my family, our roots, our path. And he said, looked right at me. And he said, no, Kevin, you're a natural born leader. I've always known that since you was a kid. You know, you're pretty radical. You're pretty freaking, people have tough time listening to you, handling you, but no, you're good. You're the one. We all know about you. Everybody in the state knows about you. We know your path. You're right on this. Fight him. I said, well, you need to fight him inside. He says, we are. And then we switched the conversation politically to Trump. And I says to him, here's my belief on Trump. I says Trump is softening. I think his heart is softening. I think he's vastly, radically different than he was in his first presidency. I think he got played. I think he's going back to he was one of these. Oh, yeah, he would go to those rallies. I was in New York. I lived in New York in all those times. I was the fierce activist on the anti-Iraq Afghanistan when it happened. That's how I got these scars across my face, living in this violent place. Trump would go off on Iraq and Afghanistan and who was orchestrating that Wolfowitz. Remember Cheney harder than anyone. He would rail KSL, pound, and we talked about this. He and we had a long conversation about this, and I said, well, you know what I believe? I believe that, it's written into our own doctrine that there comes a time. It's called the white horse prophecy in this religion, but other religions have the same thing. All of them have the false prophets take the field in Hairspray, and they talk like this. The way he talks, all passive. There's your first warning sign. We had a conversation about this. He says, no, I agree with you. I think he's pure evil. He says, a lot of people in here do. He says, where'd he come from? And he says, he's not liked. And I says, I know, I've dealt with him. And he says, anybody that's really talked to him, had anything to do with it, they really don't like him. I said, you need to force him out. We need to replace this. I mean, the president of this faith grew up right there. Right behind me, he's 100 years old, but he's no heart surgeon, I know him. He knows him. And I says, well, he needs to make a statement. Yeah, I agree. So Trump, when he's talking to King Abdullah II, and King Abdullah II, everybody says that he was nervous, and King Abdullah II knew beautifully what he did. He got to Trump. Nobody's ever got to Trump. Name one close personal friend Trump has. People like that don't have friends. He grew up in a family, his mom and dad, where to show any emotion was weakness. His father used to just pound in it. Which is the worst way. It's a perfect way to raise a sociopath. It's disturbing. That's how he got raised. Remember his father sent him off to military school? Yeah, that's a fact. The chauffeur driving there. So King Abdullah catches Trump off guard and says, well, I'll tell you one thing. He's asking you about, clearing out Gaza. And he's like, well, I can tell you one thing we will do. We will take 2,000 children that are fighting for their lives critically with cancer. We'll take them immediately right now. And you see, Trump had no clue about that, and it really caught Trump. It's the first time I've ever seen him emotional, ever. And it caught Trump off guard, and it showed that he does have a little bit of empathy. He's got grandchildren. He's getting older. He almost, if that don't change you. And he looked at him and he says, you could see he's caught off guard. And you could actually see some emotion in him for the first time I've ever seen it. And he's like, wow, that really touches my heart. That's wonderful. Off script, off bowing to his imperialist freaking owners. When we grew up here, I would go to Sunday school primary, pretty well every day of the week. I grew up in a really, really, this predominant religion. This was the 60s and 70s, a pretty loose, well, they were very, very communal. My grandfather right here, I live on it, was the welfare farm. Which, what it was is, it was a co-op farm among farmers that produced produce and then put it into the storehouse, and then anybody could come get it, which was a fantastic. We had them all over here. We had them. We had a peery right there. We had, and anybody, it didn't matter what faith you were, could come in there and get what they needed. And people say, well, people are ripping it off game of the season. People that don't deserve it, whatever. They're just too lazy to work, whatever. And they would always say, well, that's fine. We don't care. We'll let God take care of that. No, we're friendly and open. They're not that way anymore. And we had this conversation. I said, really? We're going to put more nuclear waste here. We're going to be the nuclear hub, the most evil thing to a people, the most anti this faith, this thing is nuclear. And he says, oh, I totally agree. I said, well, he needs to make a statement. So this is an open debate to Governor Cox to debate Kevin Blanch. I'm seventh generation here. So connected. I mean, Ike Potter, I'm 1824 on my grandmother's side, Ella. I mean, the famous historian. I'm Abe, the freaking fourth grandson, you know. He only had 3 girls. I mean, I'm so salt of the earth this state that my social media addresses would come up the LDS East 8 Hospital. That was where my home was, right on the corner looking over the Capitol. I've been there. I've lived it. It's so brutal. It's so hardcore. Nuclear fallout, nuclear waste. They don't guard the store. And here's the thing with the SMRs. They want to turn us into the experimental island. Well, every time they've been experimenting, including 8/8/2019, look it up. Didn't get invited to report here. Oh, I did it. I did a full hour post-ignorance project on my radio show at the school radio when they blackballed me. An SMR in Russia, but they've been trying to get it for decades and decades. In 2019, all the nuclear physicists were lined up. It was an SMR, and they were putting it in a rocket, see if the SMR could run the rocket. It was an SM modular reactor thing. It blew up and killed all the nuclear physicists. Killed them all. We know that because there's certain trace elements, and you know how heavily guarded the reindeer are in Norway. Their radiation detection over there is fierce in their food chain. They picked it up. So we know this is factual. Idaho National Lab, who's running this, and believe it or not, Trump's first administration, he's the one that funded that. But it's different this time, no doubt. I mean, you think about tariffs. Tariffs was an old Democrat liberal thing back when the Democrats were the party of labor. Sealing off the borders, no immigrants in here whatsoever. That was an old left thing. The unions would have none of it. If you hired, I own Blanch Plaster. If I pulled up on a job site with a whole crew of exploited labor, the homeowner would come out with a gun. I mean, the mentality is so different. But these are old schoolers, like I am. Fierce anti-nukers. We paid the price here. The 350 open air tests. Everybody knows what I'm down. And I don't do opinion. I lived in the bone marrow transplant center off and on for 5 years at LDS State, which could be the top one in the entire country. I mean, so radical in there. So look up Marshall Jensen. He was in the room next to me. That could be the most famous leukemia case. KSL doing all these, which, what a beautiful soul. What a fantastic person. The pioneer. He was the first one to get the new treatment. It was a mistake. He died. But Kevin, I mean, it's brutal in there. Any given day you go in there, over half the people in there are all southern Utah. We call it the red dust city. Life excavated. You think it went away? When southern Utah makes up, 5-10% of the population that hospital serves, yet over half are in there, and that's not opinion. HIPAA laws are not there to protect patients. HIPAA laws are there to protect earth poisoners. So we're going to start experimenting here with SMRs that don't exist. So every time an SMR has ever been tried, smaller, lipstick on a pig, salt thing, you still have to do the condensed. And I want to ask this to Governor Cox. You better get schooled up. Anybody who tells you they're pro-nuclear and they say, these SMRs, whatever, are different. No, they're not. They're the same thing. They still use uranium. They says they can split the atom via hydrogen. It's still. And they don't split atoms, they smash atoms. How do they smash atoms? The centrifuge process. People don't know about that component. Uranium is toxic as hell, nasty. The Fukushima waste is already coming to southern Utah under the COX regime? I don't think Herbert would have even let it in. I knew Olene Walker. She lived right here. I grew up with her. She's much older than me, but her mother was my second grade teacher. Her auntie was my first grade teacher. I knew T.O. Smith really personally. My grandma and my grandpa were close friends with him. They tore down his beautiful house over there. I get into that. It's disgusting. His heirs. She blocked it. These people are rolling in their graves. So it's an open invitation, Governor Cox. Standing on the state line. Turn uranium 238. So out at Energy Solutions, this is an energy solution rent bill they want to expand to bring more waste, higher toxic waste. We do not use 1 drop of nuclear energy in this state. Not 1 drop. We don't make Any. Never have, never will. Your own Orange Jesus, Lord and Savior, Trump says, we need to cut this down into half. He's going to pull your funding from Idaho National Lab. I'm here to tell you, this whole thing's going to come apart, and it's just going to be robbing him. We got robbed $1 billion. We talked about this at NewScale. The own CEO of NewScale says we went all over the world to try to get someone to bite on this lie. I'm the guy that exposed NewScale's original funding was Kenwood Financial. Look it up. Was a Ponzi scheme of South American gangster who went to prison for it. The SEC went after him. It was all fraud. It was all for the whole country. The whole company's all fraud. I'm at Idaho National Lab all the time. Blake, my buddy, owns Atomic City. I'm there all the time. How many times have I been on there? I know everybody that works there. I know what. How about just a few years, the Blackfoot, Idaho freaking firefighters are called and look that one up, and you could hear the canisters blowing up. The razor. How about when they had the accident in the 60s and to peel people off the floor? So Paul, who I left his obituary with Allison McFarland, the only person that ever confronted the RNSC on this whole nightmare, he died. He was fighting at the exact same time I was. We grew up together. He was born and raised up there. Arco, Idaho. Johnny, who was in there, Arco, Idaho. He passed away in there with me. Young. We all have victims here in the state of Utah. Nuclear fallout causes cancer. You think they guarded out there? The hot reactor that's coming in here. Did you see KSL, KUTV, any of those people? Did you see any of these people? Oh, we're going to reopen this. No, they're not. They're getting pork free. This is Bill Gates written it. His Jackalope factory in Cameron, Wyoming is owned by Rocky Mountain Power, which is owned by Bill Gates. It's sham. Price Anderson, Jake Garn, our senator here, fought Price Anderson his whole life. They have to affirm it. That means Immunity Act. So all this money they get, Holtec gets, 3 Mile Island, Palisades going to reopen, all this lies and bullshit, building this, Utah, all this money's going to flow here. They can rip it off and thieve it, and they don't. Energy Solutions, Holtec, all of it, they don't have to pay it back. It's called the Immunity Act. They re-upped it for another 20 years. So let's read out of the only book I ever wrote, and I don't believe in book writing. I don't like it. You can't read, Blanch. You ain't got your glasses. Yeah, we'll read that at another time. I don't have my glasses on. The post-ignorance is a pure art movement in the concept of art itself, in the concept of art as culture, in the concept that people are culture, in the concept that inspiration and influence are great historical artists. Van Gogh on Malay, like Pollock to reference to Kandinsky, like Monet's to the sunlight, morning, dawn, winter, spring, fall, summer. It is influenced by the invokeness of the time. My look at culture is there of today. Economic theory, popular culture, art has more reality than the lack thereof art. The mind of seeing when others, for some uncognitive reason, do not see. Everyone saw life millenniums. Everyone saw a simple line for millenniums. Everyone saw eclectic color for millenniums. It is more per se than the artist. Monet saw the light. Millet saw the struggle. Van Gogh saw the line. Smithson saw the simplicity of the line and the shape against the landscape. Kandinsky saw the election of color and shape. Pollock saw the color of their minds, saw fast and truth. Their minds were strong enough to act upon what they understood when all others did not understand. Not yet. They had strong backs and they knew how to work. They were the purification of ambition, intelligence, education, smooth with work ethic. I visualized for over 2 decades, blah, 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 blah. My Hawking trowel in my hand. Remember, my uncle wanted me to be I was one of those. So wild. I graduated 698 at 699 at Weber State. At Weber High. I was already at Weber State. I was one of those gifted ones. Highest scores in the country on the opposite. It was called the Einstein test when I was a kid. I didn't even know about this. They gave it to me in the 5th grade, 5th and 6th graders. Right here at West Weber Elementary, they tore down the Leslie Hodson masterpiece. The Leslie Hodson masterpiece at Walkwest Junior High, they tore it down. I designed the yearbooks. I was the artist. I was the athlete. I was the track guy. Had a beautiful, happy freaking life on the landscape. Weber High, all Leslie Hodson masterpiece inside those. I got to grow up inside those. You think that made a difference? Oh boy, your surrounding. Oh boy. They gave the new Einstein test in 1972. 71. A counselor in the 8th grade came to me and he says, Kevin, have you ever seen this? What is it? He says, you got the highest sky in the country on the observational test. It was just hearing and seeing sound. That's all it was. You got the highest score in the United States. He says, I'm going to start applying you for all these major universities around. I think you need to be an early college student. This guy was a genius. He knew my mom from Big City. He knew my grandfather, Abe. There's so many sophisticated, beautiful, freaking people around here. Artistic, culturally, broad, beautiful, freaking imaginative minds. Gone. The great Junction City. So he says, I really think you should go to, and he was suggesting, and Caltech came up. So I went home and told my grandpa, hey, I says, he told me, he says, oh, I know that guy. He's a good guy. You know, this is what he thinks I should do. He should start applying early college, you know, and whatever. And I said, he said, what do you think, Kevin? I said, I think what you told me, that I was not going to inherit 5 cents from you and that I need to learn a trade. I grew up in those sand pits, the purest whitest sand, and I could have making bar towel and thing. I grew up with the sand and the plaster, mixing in a wheelbarrow. No, I'm going to be a plaster. The Hawk and Trowel. Because I read a book about Michelangelo, and he said the Hawk and Trowel was the greatest art. He's even more than the bow and the violin. Mixes strength and physicality and dynamic. He says, I like that, you know. And he says, you learn a trade, boy. You're not going to Caltech. He says, that place is full of the most evil people on the planet. That place is evil. It's corrupt. It's dirty. I says, well, they have more Nobel Prizes than anything. Nobel Prizes are corrupt and dirty. And it played out. He was right. Barack Obama has a Nobel Prize. Who knew I was really good at killing people? The corruption. They got it. Says, no. You know, so he says, you're going to your community college. You're going to your local. You know, you go to Balboa there in La Jolla. I'll be okay with that. You can go to the community college there in SoCal. But you need to go right here. Ours. Weber State. It's a good school with lots of good, which it was. So I did. I'll debate you anytime, Cox. I'm the world's foremost expert on nuclearism. It's unarguable. Up one side, down the other. Next time somebody tells you they're pro-nuclear energy, these SMRs, that was clear back in the early 60s when it blew up and radiated the whole place. Still radioactive. Von Arco, it's named after. Idaho National Lab. Inside RT, which is scrubbed now, a guy called in on like day 2, in Fukushima, Japan. He called into RT. And they says, well, you're inside. Yeah, it's a nightmare. And he said, you know, there's a guy somebody brought it up. There was a guy on the internet named Kevin Blanch is saying these are full blown out freaking meltdowns. They're lying. Kevin Blanch is right. They are. What are you doing there? Where do you live? I live in Arco, Idaho. You're in Fukushima, Japan? It's like, yes. I work for Idaho National Lab. What are you doing there? Idaho National Lab. Japan's the 51st state. Who would build nuclear reactors all over the most radioactive? Let's rebuild them again. Let's reopen Fukushima. Oh, please. Maybe you can reopen San Onofre when it's all torn down. They're bringing the waste of San Onofre here to Energy Solutions. 2 train loads a week. Truckloads, everything. I freaking guard it. I'm all over it. It's over the state legal limits because why? I reported from East 8, the bone marrow transplants, out of my window because those guys were all I'm the one that broke that story. Kamala Harris is the AG. I'm the one that fed her all the goods because those guys were feeding it to me because they were afraid they were going to kill him. I says, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I had a central line in me. I was dying in there. You know, that's 13 years ago right now. February. January that year, 2012, it's just a steam malfunction. They were cheating on the exchange to save them hundreds of billions, including, and Kamala Harris raided the PV and Cherry, the head of the California Park, raided his house. They had him dead to rights. They were going to prison, all of them, saving hundreds of them, chopping up all the money. They were jerry-rigging the reactor, the steam, and that's why it backed up into the core. Last stand, you have to open the valve. They opened the valve and irradiated the shit out of San Clemente, that whole region, and their own Marines again, Marine base, just like they did my father. Marched my father in 1951 into the freaking Nevada, a drafted United States Marine. None of his brothers and sisters, he has 7 of them. Not one of them got cancer, ever. Some of them were still alive in their 90s. He never had a cavity. I never mowed him down in the prime of his life. They all the atomic veterans. You're Southern Utah. We all know. You're telling me. So, well, that was an accident at Arco, Idaho, clear back in the 60s. What about Santa Susana, Rocketdyne? Do you know about that one, Governor Cox? Look it up. In L.A. Girls. Remember when he brought it up? His little girl died at 11 years old? Folding 1,000 paper cranes. Now, you think about the indictment on Governor Cox, the indictment on the Utah media, the indictment. We talked about this. I showed him the pictures, whatever. I'm the guy that orchestrated that. Jim Peterson and I, it was them that reached out. I reached to them, then they came to us. The old guy flew out of freaking Utah. Sadako folding 1,000 paper cranes, great niece. They all came. We orchestrated for August 6th, which I do my ceremony out there every year, to come and reach out the Blanch and make peace. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You're talking, now remember, I have the autumn dog disease, they call it in Japan. Sadako, at 11 years old, died, folding 1,000, but she got to 644. They come, give us one of the real ones she folded. I'm the second one that got to hold it. Jim's son's first. I sat right there in Tippett's chair. International media from all over the world. Jim and I sent emails out to Weber State, University of Utah, Southern Utah State, freaking Southern Utah, every university, BYU, Utah, to their history departments, to their science departments, to the governor's office, to Spencer Cox himself. He was the lieutenant governor then. To Mike Lee's office, to Mitt Romney's office, to Mia Love's office, to every one of them. Rob Bishop at the time, every one of them. International media from all over the world showed up. Do you know, not one of them showed up? Not one. No KSL, no KUTV, no nothing. One of the news stations, I believe is Channel 4, showed up an hour and a half later after the ceremony was over. Interviewed Jim. Now remember, I have the Adam. She walks right up to me and hugs me and starts to cry. Thank you, God. I was not sequestered in Japan. Well, man, I was telling the truth and they all knew it. Ask Kathy Iwani, who helped us get sent up for change. She was living there. She's fled back home to San Clemente. Ask Rachel Godoya. She was living there. She's fled back home to San Diego. Go, they'll tell you. Kevin Blanch is the only reason we even know. That's why we came home. And he was right the whole time. The Prime Minister of Japan, NATO, Khan, he was not the Prime Minister. Came right up to me in Del Mar and hugged me and told me thank you for all my work. I'm the guy, Gregory Jacko, the planner from Harvard. Gregory Jacko literally runs from me when he sees that. You go ask Peter, Sandy P. witnessed it. I mean, the only person ever confronted Alice in the NRC. The NRC asked me, the NRC said, I know everybody from there. I'm the keynote speaker on the NRC on every freaking, without Kevin Blanch setting up, it never gets closed down, let alone everything put in the dry can, and it's over and it's done. It's the low-level waste that's coming here. The canisters sure ain't coming here because of Kevin Blanch. They wanted to put the canisters here. I'm the guy that blocked that. I'm the guy that freaking put the dagger to Blue Castle on the green. Individually. By myself. Video killed it. What are you going to do when Trump comes out? And it's only a matter of time now because he's already said this. He's already said this. We want to cut this in half. He's already said this. Speaking like an old Democrat liberal. Oh, that's what he was for all. He didn't switch party affiliation to the Obama regime. Hello, Governor Cox. Let's debate. Any place, anywhere, anytime. Mediator, Doug Provisio, like Edward Snowden. You know, my question went up to Edward Snowden. Inside that thing, and they search me, whatever. I have video of it. They say it's against the law for me to put it up. How come Doug Provisio, when he played the whole thing, didn't put my question up? I have a lot of connections in this town. A lot of very powerful people. You can turn your back on me, but it's not how many's watching, it's who's watching. You know what that is? That's from Cathedral of the Redwoods. You know what that is? They gave it to me. I remember being in Bath in Austria, full of cancer, whatever. Standing ovation outside of Vienna. Kevin Blanch gave me some champagne and everything. Freedom Eisenblau. I'm the guy that announced the world she died. She requested the meeting with me. Said she was worried about her English. 4 hours straight grilling me. on the freaking 200th anniversary of Waterloo. The most accomplished anti-nuclear activist in history besides this guy, Albert Einstein. Make me, Cox. He calls me a liar. Or excuse me. He calls me, I can't take it. He called me stupid twice. Twice. Well, just like Trump said, the biggest bully in the room is the weakest. When somebody calls you stupid, now, Governor Cox is ignorant. That's different than calling somebody ignorant. Ignorance is not about stupidity. Ignorance is about lack of knowledge. When someone gets into I can't take these environmentalists serious. We can't take you serious. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Not one word. So I told him, you need inside the hierarchy. He says, it's already happening. There's a lot of people that are pissed, Kevin. Yeah. There's a lot of people that want him gone. And these are high ranking. I mean, right at the top. And I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to keep going to them. I know a lot of them. I knew Brent Scowcroft personally. I stuck at his house. I know a lot of powerful people in there. I own Blanch Plus. I did. Everybody knows my family, knows my line. Everybody. And for I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. They've lost their way. And I told them straight up, I believe that the time has come in this country where false prophets have taken, worship an orange Jesus? Please. But Trump's going to pull the plug. I'm here to tell you. And then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So they've delayed the vote. It's going to be next week. I've already organized a group. I've got a group from Weber State. They're going to go with me. Working with them. Young, brilliant people. What are you going to do? It's only a matter of time. Trump's going to pull the plug on the nuclear arms city on Idaho National Lab. And they're orchestrating this. $1 billion has come out of your bills. It's called, right? If you pay a power bill, $1 billion. New Scale comes right out and says, why would we keep whipping a dead horse? We got off of it. Talking about, he says, we went to every municipality in the world. The only people who would buy it was in Utah. Why? That's what I told him. Who is calling these shots? And he says, we know who's calling them. And he wouldn't give me names or whatever, but he says, we know who runs this state. And he's one of them. He's like, no. They're pissed. So go ahead, you state legislators. Go ahead, you fools. And Milner, the worst president in the history of Weber State, she sponsored this. She couldn't tell you a spent fuel rod from a cooling tower. She couldn't tell you uranium-238 from 235. She couldn't tell you a freaking strontium-90 from freaking plutonium. What about Fukushima? And that's what I told him. He says, I know all about Fukushima. He told me, because of you. Keep your good work up, Kevin. I'm very proud of you. And he looked right at me and he says, I got your back. He says, no, we appreciate you. You're as old school Utah as they get. And he gave me a hug on the way out the door and he says, don't you give up. No, you're doing the good work. Yeah. For when I was sick, you refused to give me something to eat. For when I was thirsty, you forgive me. When I was cold and weak and vulnerable, walking the coast of California, you refused to help me, clothe me, keep me warm. When I was in the cancer prison, you refused to think. Talk about the Sermon on the Mount. Their heal they afflicted. Feed the poor. There's nothing more repressive than nuclear waste all over our place. Every time they've tried an SMR, it's blown the hell up and radiated the place. Is that what we want here? Because that's what they're going to do. This goes through, you're going to be experimenting on it right behind my house, Western Zirconia. The nuclear freaking. Did you know Trump's already pulled the plug on the Trident thing? The Minuteman silos are right behind my house. They're redoing Trident right behind my house, Little Mountain, Utah. That's where I live. I live on the Great Salt Lake. Western Zirconium's right there. They're doing it right. Did you know he's already pulled the plug on it? Did you know that? He's already come out. That's over. That's being reported, not by KSL. Did you see KSL or KTV reporting the hot reactor coming in? You know how much work that was for me? They didn't tell me. I had to politic freaking Nevada High Patrol. That was dangerous ass work. I had to really work at it. They kept that high secret. That video, did you see those videos? Did you see that KSL, KUTV? Did you see it? No. Who's the journalist? Who's the activist? Who's the righteous one? Who's the true to all these philosophies? I don't care if you're native, you're Hindu, you're freaking whatever. We know this is the top of the heap and the most evil. Nuclear. What are you doing, Governor Cox? So this is an open invitation to debate you on nuclearism. This is the nuclear waste place. What? He's going to cause, he is creating so many enemies right now. You don't even know. They're not reopening this. They'll tell you. Palisades. Kevin, what do you really do for a living? I shut down nuclear reactors. Keep going. It's a long, hard fight, you know. Oh, we're halfway there. Living on an anti-nuclear prayer. Take my hand. We'll make it, I swear. Oh, boy. I'm not going to lose this fight. Yeah, I'm going to win this fight just like I did cancer. He says, well, look how you beat cancer. He says, you know, my doctor and he are friends. He's like, you're beyond a miracle. I'll quote my doctor. You're the greatest miracle in my career. I didn't have a transplant. I was too sick. I was sent home with hospice. I remember when they gave me my handicap sticker in there, I threw it across the lawn. I'm not handicapped. I went and walked the coast of California with the wells and the seals and the environment. For your body is a temple. You know, stand up for what's right. Oh, I know what's right. So he calls me stupid. Try me. Try me. World's foremost expert. Try me on Utah. You want to try me on Utah history? You want to try me? I mean, like Potter himself, my lines. I could write book after book after book. I know more about historically the path of this state than anybody. Try me. Try me. Come on, God. You call me stupid? Try me. Try me. The stupidest person in the room, huh? The bully. Trumpism. What are you going to do when Trump pulls the plug on? I don't shout. He's going to. Come on, Trump. You already said it on freaking Joe Rogan. You already said it. You're branding yourself in history, Governor Cox, as being the fool you are being played by the new Bill Gates, the guy who started the operating system here. He's the guy. The jackalope factory in Cameron will never happen. He'll get all the money, pretend. It's like they have at Idaho National. Idaho National was mothballed. Obama re-upped that. And then Trump doubled down. And old Biden, oh my God. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Nuclear freaking waste, nuclear fallout, nuclear testing, nuclear experimentation. That's what this bill's all about. It's deadly. It causes cancer. Deadly cancer. It's poison. It's a loot job. So this is your open invitation, Governor Cox, to debate me any place, anytime, anywhere. You pick the moderator. I don't care. You pick the panel. I don't care. You pick the rules. I'm in. Don't say the F word, whatever you do. It's your symposium. You're all a bunch of fools. Talk about throwing cancer karma on yourself. A bunch of fools. Kevin Blanch, the Michael Jordan of the activist fucking world. I'm going to win this fight. Watch me. Stay tuned.